Hi there, Titans, and welcome back to another Titan Academy video. Today we'll be talking about multi-step containers, and we'll be focusing on the interactivity and features of our multi-step containers. Last time we gave a general overview of multi-step containers and compared some of those containers to one another. Today we'll be focusing primarily on the stepper container, although we will also be showing some things that are relevant to all of the multi-step containers. First, we're going to review how you can add steps to your container. We'll talk about how you can have conditional steps that don't appear always and only conditionally appear. We will talk about how to trigger conditions based on steps and run actions depending on what step you're on. We'll highlight some key interactivity such as validation, disabling the name click, using dot style for mobile, and finally, we'll talk about how you can hide the standard controls on your containers and use custom buttons instead. Let's get started. So just to give you a high-level demonstration of some of the things that we'll show today, I already have a multi-step container, specifically a stepper, built out here with fields inside, and I want to just highlight some key features that we'll be discussing in a moment. So first of all, if I try to click next here, it will tell me that these fields are mandatory and it will not allow me to continue until I fill this out. You can remove this functionality and we'll show you how in a moment. So I'm just going to enter some data here just so that it lets me continue. All right. Now the next thing I want you to notice here is when I answer this question, right now I only have 2 steps, but the moment that I click yes here, you'll notice that I've been added another step, and this just demonstrates that we can conditionally show different steps on our stepper. Notice how when I try to click on marketing budget, it also doesn't let me, and that's because we've disabled the name click. We are forcing our end user to use our buttons that we've set up. Okay. So we have this step that we can fill out. Nothing's mandatory here, so I'm just going to go next. And we have a final step. Now, notice that when I got to my final step, I also see different buttons. I no longer see my next button, and coming back to the different steps, depending on what step I'm on, I'm going to be displaying different buttons. So we can conditionally hide and show and do other actions based on the step that we're on. First of all, how can we add steps to our stepper? We can click on the gear icon and we can do edit mapping. And here you can add any steps and write the values for these steps right over here. Like we showed, you can conditionally hide and show steps based on other fields. So for example, under my marketing budget here, under my company details, I have a condition on this field that depending on the value of this field, I will conditionally show this field. Now, the other thing I can do is I can write conditions based on the value of my current step. And we saw that with the different buttons that we see depending on what step we're on. So let me just show you that condition. If I'm on my stepper and I go to stepper conditions, and you want to write this condition on the stepper itself or on the multi-step container itself, again, this would apply to all of the different containers that we have. I can write a condition like this saying that if my stepper value equals this specific value, hide the submit and back button. And for each eventuality, I can hide and show or run really any actions that I would want from here based on the stepper value. All right, now let's take a look at some of the interactivity on our stepper. So if I head over to interactivity, we have a lot of things that we can cover here. We're just going to be focusing on a couple of key aspects. So first of all, you may have noticed that my stepper is vertical. I can also make this horizontal, and that's just up to you in terms of the UI that you want. The next thing that I want to show is validation. Now we saw that when we tried to go to the next step, it didn't allow us to because we had some mandatory fields. If you don't want that functionality, and this is standard functionality for steppers and multi-step containers, for tabs and accordions, you do not have the validation, and that's because those are containers that are not meant for a linear process. But for containers like this that are meant for a linear process, we assume that you want your end user to fill in all the fields or pass all the validations before they move on. If you don't want that, you can always click on ignore validation, and that would make sure that they can go between steps without validating those fields. The next thing I want to show here is disable name click, and this will allow us to prevent our end user from jumping around freely within our stepper because they can no longer click on whatever step they would like, and instead they need to click on the next button in order to get to their requested step. And so we can disable name click if we don't want them to be able to jump around at all and we want to force them into our linear process. And again, this is something that exists for the multi-step container and stepper, but not for the tab or for the accordion elements. The next thing I want to demonstrate is what happens when we look at this in mobile. I have it over to mobile, and you can see here that when we have this vertical, it's not really such a big issue. But once we move this to be horizontal, I can no longer see the different labels without scrolling on my header, and this can be difficult on a mobile device. So in order to make this simpler for our end user, we can use something called dot style, and this is specifically meant for mobile, but of course you can use this in desktop as well. And the dot style hides my labels, but creates an easier view to see which step I'm on, or at least what number step in the process I'm on, without displaying the full label like this. All right, the final thing that I want to show is how you can hide the controls of the stepper and instead use your own custom buttons. Now, steppers and multi-step containers, and really any of our multi-step containers that we have, automatically have their own controls, and that would be a next button, a back button, and on our final step, a finish button. And you can configure the finish action right here for that button. But what we can't do here is we can't run any actions on back and next. We can, of course, run actions based on the step of the stepper, but what if we wanted to have our button trigger a specific action depending on the step that we're on, and we wanted just a higher level of customization both in terms of styling and functionality? We can hide the controls here and use our own buttons to trigger different actions for the stepper or just in general. So I'll just show you, I'm going to click on my back button here, and I'll show you in an action flow that we can do. If I head over to element interactivity and I head over to stepper interactivity, and notice that we have this for multi-step, accordion, and we also should have it for tabs as well. And you have a few different options here. First of all, you can reset the value inside your container. You can head to previous step or next step or to a specific step. And you can also trigger a finish. And you could also force scroll to a specific place in your stepper in this case. And so you can use your buttons to navigate wherever you'd like on the stepper using the stepper interactivity. And of course, this exists for all of your containers. So if you wanted to go to a specific panel in your accordion, or if you were looking to go to a specific tab in your tab container, you can do that as well. These multi-step containers are really handy, and you can really execute some really interesting functionality. So I highly recommend using these, and good luck.